have other games to talk about. We have another game to talk about. The Rugby Championship continues on Saturday afternoon. We're moving to Port Elizabeth in South Africa to the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, where the Springboks take on the Pumas.
They do, yes.
Quite a turnaround for the Springboks. 3 Lions tours, and now they have a match against the Pumas. Definitely an interesting game, all right. Andrew Brace of our land, the Irish referee, who, well, listen, brace yourselves for a bit of braceage. I mean, it could be a bit stop-start. I think the hookers and the front row are going to have to be mindful of how he calls scrums.
That's true.
With his slow bind. Sit. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff you got to be ready for.
That's a free kick. I'm afraid you went early. No scrum for you.
Exactly. So both sides will have to be mindful of that. But we got a fun game coming up here between two really good sides, and I think this is a potential danger here for the Springboks. I mean, they might be the Lions tamers, but the Pumas tamed the world Six Nations champs. They tamed the All Blacks last year.
Tamers versus Six Nations champion beaters and All Black conquerors in the Pumas. Yeah, that's worth the price of admission alone. Just great box office quality to both of these teams, and recent form to both of these teams in terms of what we've seen from them most recently on the pitch, which is the most important thing. Just ancillary stuff as well, but a beautiful stadium, the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium out there as well. Just nice to see a different part of South Africa where they're going to be for this week and next week. They're going to be hosting there before both of these teams will then head to Australia for the rest of the Rugby Championship. So it'll be just nice to see a different part of South Africa before we kind of sign off of it on it for the season of international rugby. Just good colour as well.
And listen, obviously these sides have their own history. We like to look back as when they first meet in the season. They met 30 times total, not too many in their history. The Springboks have won 26-3. There was one draw in 2012, a 16-all draw in Argentina, which came off the back of a colossal win from the Springboks in their debut season. I remember that well.
It's true.
They have only played matches since 1993, so it's been largely a contest of the professional era between them as well.
True.
But I would say that Argentina are coming on strong. They've flipped their potential looseness and clunkiness on its head, and then Ledesma came in. They became, instead of being a free-flowing attacking team, they became a very forward-oriented team, and then they went to the World Cup, a team that was a little clunky and quite stupid,
but had fixed their scrum problem.
That was it.
That was the one bit of progress you'd cite, is like, actually their scrum was a basket case and now it's not. Now it's a weapon.
I mean, if you're a Springbok fan thinking this is going to be easy, the Pumas last year had a defense that would rival the Springboks, that caused the All Blacks all kinds of problems. Intense line speed, super technical low tackle and jackal kind of stuff. Brilliantly effective. Managed to rendered the All Black attack for at least a game just completely null and void. Likewise, the Wallabies got all over them with diving low, chop tackles, poaches, aggressive defense, real high tackle completion percentage. Pablo Matera and Marcus Kramer getting after teams. It's a very, very dangerous game if you're the Springboks. In fact, there's an image we have just to illustrate this. If you're a South African fan, do not sleep on the Pumas. You may have beaten the Lions, but they are a very, very dangerous rugby team. It's true. Like, this is a match that is wrought with danger.
It's true. Well, you don't need to convince any Irish fan of that, because we've had our hearts, our hype derailed very often in World Cup times by a very game Argentina side, and once they get to camp together for a period of time, they're just a different entity from the kind of...
They always come up with something, don't they? If they're together for a while and they're not being watched by anyone, they come up with something. Last year it was a phenomenal defence. Phenomenal defence. That's what they came up with. And this year, they've obviously had their success against Wales, which was off the back in large part of that defence. It was. But they've been away now. They've been in camp since then, pootling away doing something or other, and I dare say they're going to come out and surprise us with something.
I would think so. They're usually pretty much innovators, and Czech has been in there with them for a time now.
Their offense might get going. You
they never know. They have Chocobaris now in the centre, who's an exciting young prospect, and they've always got lightning out in the back three as well. So what we're hoping for from them is that they can blend that stellar defense and great set piece with a bit more incision on the offensive side, and then suddenly you're looking at potential World Cup kind of contenders here in Argentina, which is where they rightly belong. But if you're South Africa and you're coming with a slight hangover from a Test series victory and a completely changed outfit, this is the warning for you. Don't be sleeping on the Pumas, because they will punish you for it potentially.
Absolutely. Going back to the Boks though, from their own point of view, obviously they're defending champions of this competition. In fact, it hasn't been played since 2019, but they are defending champions. They're obviously World Cup champions and Lions Series champions. They have a chance to rival that team from 2009, because the key point of difference for that team is that, as well as winning the Lions Tour and being world champions, they went on to win the Tri-Nations. They beat the All Blacks, I think, 3 times or something ridiculous, and claimed their rightful place as one of the all-time great teams. This Springbok team is up there, very, very good, but they have an even tougher task perhaps than that team against some brilliant rugby teams off the back of very little rugby, with issues with injury and all sorts going on. Not much turnaround time in terms of the weight from this game. And yet they do have a lot at stake. If winning this championship, they're the number 1 team in the world now, so they got a target on their backs.
They are rugby championship defending champs.
That's what I'm saying.
So we're still I think there's scope for them to turn up with all that in mind and be motivated for sure.
But it's going to be tough. They are the team with the target on their backs, more so even than the All Blacks these days. The Pumas beat the All Blacks. Now they got a chance against the World Cup champion Lions taming Springbok side. I think the Pumas will be highly motivated. So the Springboks, it only gets tougher from here. Once you become the best, then you have to stay there, and that's even more difficult.
It is, when everyone's vying for you. Just as far as the squads are concerned, we do have both teams as they were named earlier on this week. And familiar faces in the Argentinian one, a bit more of a change from a South African point of view. I suppose we're going to start with South Africa just as hosts, but we have Oxen Che, Joseph Dwiba and Wilco Low as the front row. Completely different front row union from what we saw last week, but no less competent one, if I'm being honest. They're all pretty savage players themselves. And then more familiar faces in the second row, we have Eben Etzebeth and Lou Diager renewing their partnership from last week. Awesome players. Then in the back row, you have Sia Khaleesi, captain, with Quagga Smith and Jasper Visa. The 2 men who were kind of interchanging the 8 jersey throughout the series will now both be on the pitch together.
Franco Mostert, a little knackered from last week, no doubt.
Understandable rest time for him. Then the back line is where you see a pretty much wholesale changes. You have Cobus Reinach retaining his jersey at number 9, but then at fly half you have Elton Yankees. In the centre we have Francois Steyn with Jesse Creel, completely new partnership. Then in the back 3 you have Nkosi on one wing, Nkosi on one wing, Afalele Fassi on the left wing, with Willemse at fullback. So it's a completely different. It's a B team, to be honest. It's more of a South African A team than South Africa A.
But they do have on their bench Malcolm Marks, Trevor Nyakanye and Vincent Koch, that same bomb squad unit, who are now working together as a unit very savvily. I think we've Marvin Ory, who was left out of the squad for the...
I'm excited to see him play a bit of things.
He was good against the Georgians, and he didn't get a look in against the Lions, so excited to see him have a cut. Marco van Staden has been very good. Daniel Dupria gets a go, so they do have their 6-2 split with Herschel Yankees and Mornay Steyn back again on the bench,
just in case he might have to kick a game icing penalty or 2.
Who knows?
He'd be up for it anyway.
It's not quite an A team. I mean, they do still have their same engine room. They have their captain. But on the in the back line, obviously it's quite changed. The midfield of Elton and Francois Steyn and Jesse Creel. I mean, Jesse Creel, I don't know much about his form. He hasn't played in so long. He was decent against the Georgians. Francois Steyn and Elton Yankees are not coming in off good form. They're coming in off dodgy form.
They are.
So those guys, huge onus on them to step up. And,
particularly on defence, because it's like that's what they make their MO on, and the flawless work that Dealindi and Am and Pollard were doing, to be honest, throughout the course of that Lions thing.
Well, Pollard was finding himself under high balls, and Yankees came on against the Lions and found himself under one high ball and dropped it crucially towards the tail end of the game, and it was very much a bad play from Elton. So they've kept the faith in him. They do sing the praises of how much of a team player he is and how hard he works for the team, but on the field his form has been very spotty in a Springbok jersey, if I'm honest.
True.
What I will say though is that the back 3 are 3 really hungry guys who really have had the form to be in the test team. They just haven't been the incumbents, so they haven't been. I mean, Fassi, Nkosi and Willemse, their form is all stunning. Nkosi, like in that A game, was brilliant.
He's awesome.
Grabbing that try. I mean, he was all over the place. He'd be thinking, I haven't done a thing wrong. I just can't get into this team.
Yeah, because
so
neither
he'd be
have
so hungry. Yeah. So hungry. All three of those guys would be so hungry to get into.
Whether they can find them, to be honest, it's on guys like Franz Stein and Creel to be able to find those channels for them, to put them in space, and on coping with the chaos and finding the edges when the ball does bounce their way in other eyeballs, which will be a dynamic in this game, as we'll get into when we look into both sides. But Argentina, by contrast, do have a kind of more familiar, more like considering what they were putting up against Wales in that 2-match series, it's more familiar what we're looking at.
They've gone with Tata Chaparro, Montoya and Gomez Cadea, their usual front row, although I would say that Tata Chaparro and Gomez Cadea, the loose and tight head, they're only playing for this week and next week, and then they've gone back to their clubs voluntarily. Allegedly.
They're not going out to Australia to continue the rugby championship, which is unfortunate.
It's apparently their personal decision. I mean, one wonders how much the club influence weighs in on them, but that's not necessarily a great thing for the Pumas. It might not mean much, but obviously it's their main props. It's their starting 2 props. But just even from a mindset point of view, it might be an indication that they're not as dialed in as a squad as they sometimes are.
Yeah, perhaps
there's bad signs in that. But I mean, the squad is still stellar. Guido Petty and Marcus Kramer in the locks. 3 class ball playing and physical back row forwards. I mean, the back row battle is mouth-watering. Pablo Matera, Facundo Isa and Rodrigo Bruni, whose form has been stellar at number 8. Real classy ball playing number 8, and they're all super physical on defence as well. Great carriers and defenders, all 3 of them.
And when you count Kramer as an auxiliary member of that, it's a lot of work rate and heft in that loose forward combination.
Try and open up a team with those guys in their back row like that. Those loose forwards are stellar. They've gone with Escura. They're missing Cabelli through injury, I believe, at the moment, so it's Escura gets the nod over Bertrand at 9. Sanchez sticks in at 10. They've got De La Fuente and Chocobaras in the centres. Chocobaras, very exciting player, just picked up the top couture with Toulouse. He's bundle of potential, but really, really classy footballer. Look out for him. And then Lightning in the back 3, Maroney, who is in great form, grabbed an awesome physical try against Wales. Delguy, who's always a danger man, and Carreras at fullback, who has his moments of being a bit wibbly, and I'm sure the box will target him.
For sure.
It's still a very, very fine team.
Buffelli's still out through injury as well, we should mention.
I think Buffelli's issue was that he was just late coming back to the squad.
Might be it. COVID quarantine concerns, but he is still with the squad, so we will see a bit of rotation here. They do have a lot of choice in those back 3 units as well in terms of who they can use, but those are the guys getting the nod to start. Then on the bench as well, we do have Facundo Bosch, Carlos Muzio and Santiago Medrano, who we might be seeing a bit more of later in the tournament based on this. But
Medrano's decent quality. They've gone with Lavanini again on the bench, interestingly. There.
He's another one that you're putting in that category of players I have perpetual doubts over.
He is. Well, I mean, the man has vindicated it and then some in his time.
It's true.
Alemano, who's also a lock, is on the bench, interestingly, but they do have 4 loose forwards starting, so Alemano's on the bench as well. Bertrand covering 9, Miotti covering 10, and then Canceliere, who's a decent outside back option as well in that team. Traditional 5-3 split for the Pumas. It's an interesting game, this. We're going to look at it from the point of view of both sides, starting from the point of view of the hosts, the Springboks, and it's a tough one to call from their point of view. I mean, they're a defensive team. That's
usually their MO,
the landmark of them. But I mean, Del Indy and Am is their most solid defensive fulcrum. After that comes Peter Steph du Toit. None of those guys are there. Mostert's not even in the du Toit role. Can Jesse Creel and Francois Stein be as effective? Can Quagga Smith be as effective as Peter Steph? I think the answer is unequivocally no. I also think, in Cobus Reinach and Elton Yankees, you have less accurate kickers and guys who are more comfortable running the ball. You've got lethal guys on the wing. Do the Boks move away from their traditional modus operandi and try and throw the ball around? Is that too dangerous a thing to do against a team like the Pumas, who eat sort of clunky offenses they eat alive,
which they probably will be presented with, because as much as the guys on the outside are in form, it's a completely changed midfield combination, and it's likely to be a little clunky in patches. I think to begin with you'll see a lot of kicking. I think you'll see the kicking acumen of mainly Reinach from 9, but occasionally Elton as well. I'd be surprised if Elton completed a pass before he completed a kick, to be honest. I think I think he'll be given the MO to try and kick for territory before we try and play any rugby, and then it'll be on likely Stain and as a kind of a distributing force, with Creel being the more physical, more traditional centre, probably running hard, occupying lines to try and find the guys outside. I think between Elton and Fran Stain, you want to see their passing acumen ultimately opening them up, but not really from the middle third as much. That would be I would be a surprise deviation from what has worked so well for them, even with the change of personnel.
It is interesting. Like against Georgia, they moved the ball. I know it's tier 2 team. They moved the ball wide. They had Peter Steff on the wide channels. They had Khaleesi in the wide channels. There is scope for them to go back to that and to really try and probe that edge. I know the Pumas are good, but I think probably we're burying the lead, which is that this starts off as a physical battle.
It does.
And it's very, very
the first few collisions are more important than the first few passes, really. It's going to be like what happens when Quagga Smith runs into Facundo Issa. I wonder what happens. Like,
I'm not sure if Quagga Smith wins that battle, but the question is whether the likes of Etzebeth and De Jager can get on top of these Pumas. I mean, the Pumas have stood up to every challenge. Like the Tui Pilatus of the world last year weren't enough to get on top of them in large parts. Their defense held up. Can the Springboks be relentlessly physical, and can they win the set piece as well? Can they get the ball up in the air, win the kicking battle, frustrate the Pumas, set up some set pieces, and then get on top? Oxenche has been one of the dodgier scrummagers from a Springbok point of view. Big job for him.
He's also just back from a niggle of an injury as well, which is always tough for a prop. So we'll see how they go at scrum time, because I know the Argentinians have targeted that area and improved no end since around 2018, when they were at their worst for kind of rudderless, porous scrummaging. They've turned that around entirely, and they have a lot more heft to go on in that set piece. I think they're both very similar mould of teams, so the Boks will fancy, as they usually do when teams come to play them their way. They'll fancy getting an edge in those contexts. Like the box office collisions I want to see are when Etzebeth runs into, or when Matera runs into Etzebeth, but Matera and Etzebeth in a collision together. That's just, it's like big.
Well, that's
big,
the
big
thing
ripples.
though. It's like Etzebeth. He's a high carrier. He's an aggressive carrier. Like the guy who might handle him is Kramer with his low chop tackles. He obviously has to mind his wrap, because he sometimes does fire just shoulder
missile
first
style,
but he need his low tackling could take Etzebeth's strength out of it.
It's the best way to do it. To be honest, meeting him chest to chest is just never successful for these guys. So the chop approach is true, but I'm looking forward to all of those collisions, because I think it's box office. I've loved watching this Argentina team over the last year and a half in terms of their physical prowess and the way they managed they managed to make these games absolute arm wrestles and scraps in the tight, and they have managed to make it about that, and they did it to Wales in the Millennium Stadium, and admittedly changed Wales' team, but in that second test they managed to put their authoritative stamp on it by being that physical, domineering, collision-winning team.
Yeah, and it's not quite the same Bok team.
No,
the Boks will fancy it. The Boks will fancy being as physical, keeping it tight, winning the aerial battle. I'd say they'll highlight as like Delguy and
Carreras as well.
Carreras are vertically challenged.
Well, Carreras has had some dodgy spells under the high ball, which is why I expect the Boks will go to that. I think they would go to it anyway.
Also, they want like Fassi and Willemse chasing these kicks. Willemse has been so good under the high ball.
It's true. Like, you want to have those matchups to try and pay dividends, and they are experienced at it, because they've come off a whole test series of kind of refining those skills. Be it the guys haven't been on the pitch, but they have been training them in training, so they are still squad members. I'd expect there will be a coherence and a cohesion to their style of play, even without the same personnel. More so than that Georgia performance, which was a bit more akin to what you saw from the Lions in the warm-up games, throwing it around, and then it gets down to the nitty-gritty of it. I think once we get in and the first 10 minutes are underway, we will be treated to a bit of a tactical exchange of kicks in the middle third that the Springboks will hope to edge, and then once they start edging that and turning the screw pressure territory-wise, then you'll start to see a more proactive scrum pattern, a more proactive kind of line-out maul game. They'll want us to keep it slow and keep it stop-start, but they want to strike off set piece and really nullify the Pumas at set piece, is what this Bok team are kind of built to do, and what they will want to do.
And then the other question is, can the Pumas get an in? Like, the Boks obviously need to be sharp in terms of their defensive acumen. I don't know who leads the defence in the absence of
it's probably Creel.
It probably is Creel, and Creel does a decent damn impression when he tries to come in.
He does. He actually makes similar reads, but he's not as good a tackler, and that's kind of why he doesn't have the jersey anymore. Is that he for every 5 shoots he makes, he probably falls off one of those tackles where Am doesn't.
Yeah.
But he still makes a good read and a good shoot.
But he needs to keep them in check. He needs to keep them not giving away penalties, not giving up entrances against the Pumas. Because as tough as the Pumas' defence is, the Boks will think to themselves, listen, if we cannot let them get on top of us at the scrum at the start of the game, then unleash our weapon of a bench scrum later on in the game. Don't give them up anything at set piece, win the aerial game. They're not going to have anything for us, a bit like the Lions, because the Pumas still haven't yet to prove, this iteration of the Pumas, really since Ledesma's come in, they've yet to prove that they can move the ball really well. And while Chocobaras is a bit of a difference maker in there, a second distributor, a classy footballer in the midfield, like the Boks, Jesse Creel has a job to do on him, like that. And if Jesse Creel can get on top of him, the Pumas will likely kick everything and look to defend themselves, and that's possibly a problem for them, because the Springboks will feel like they're the bigger team, and they have on their bench Malcolm Marx and Yakanye Koch, Van Staden to come on. Like that's just a huge impact and could be too much. So I think the Boks will fancy playing perhaps a similar game.
I think like as you say, with Creel leading the line from the outside, but it is a dual wielding thing, and you'd normally have with Peter Steph du Toit, but it is on Quagga Smith, and his job on defense will be pressuring Sanchez, and like Sanchez is such a key man for them, that if you can bring that pace, and he does have pace, like Quagga Smith came from the 7 circuit, like he's used to open field running and making tackles in open space. And if he can just apply the line speed that is traditional for them on the 10, you'll see Argentina recede into a kicking game that the Springboks want them to engage in anyway. What you don't want is Sanchez with the time and space to either assess the situation, either find Chocobaras to get a bit wider, to drop it on the toe for a kick pass. Like, he has all of those skills, so you need to remove the time from him, and that'll be, I think, pretty directly on Quagga Smith. I think that'll be his job for the day. Yeah,
exactly, and that's going to be a huge factor. Defensive breakdown from the Boks, getting on top of the Pumas, and then just edging the game, and in the second half putting the squeeze on.
Yeah, the second half is when you want to see Fassi in space, when you want to see Willems to get their hands on the ball, when they've kind of put in the hard yards of the grunt up front and won the set piece. That's when the scores might come a little wider, and when Elton will be afforded the opportunity then to link with Franz Steyn and all of that stuff. That's the ideal picture for them, is them kind of turning the screw in the first half in the tight, and then ultimately the third quarter into the fourth quarter is where they think those dividends will be paid.
Yeah, absolutely. And conversely then, from a Pumas point of view, I mean, like, they obviously, you know, we still have them romantically affiliated in our heads with the wide offensive rugby. We see in South America the drippings of that all over in Uruguay and in Chile and elsewhere, and it's all influenced by Argentina, who are the big guys in South America.
Yeah, and you see the Jaguares 15 play that way, or the Argentina, the Pumas 15 that'll play in these tournaments will play that way.
They'll just whip the ball wide and run with their little wingers, putting great passes and kick passes together. Yeah,
but that's not Ledesma's take on what an Argentina team is.
Not
quite crucially, he thinks they're built on scrum. They have defensive acumen. They have La Pasión. They want to play with fire and ferocity in every second of it, and then at the end the wingers might grab a try. And to be honest, he's ticked off the boxes of things to improve. Like, from the scrum up, it started with in the tight fundamental stuff, then the defensive leaps and bounds, the strides they made last year, ultimately culminating that All Black win, and now that Wales win last week.
And they've added Checa now to the mix. Checa, so it seems like the next progression is the offense, and that's the crucial part. I mean, there is a narrative, as it was with the Lions, especially against this not the same Bok team. There is a narrative where they get on top of them at the scrum, perhaps. Gomez Cadea, who's a very, very fine scrummager, wins his battle with Oxenche, and all of a sudden penalties are coming the Pumas' way. And then that's a potentially huge in for them, and then all of a sudden they can chip up 3-pointers. The Springboks aren't getting anything off their defense. Jackal penalties, more 3-pointers. Those are the kind of things that the Pumas might look to. But I think our point stands that they as with the Lions, they're going to need to have an offense here.
They probably will. Yeah, no, they'll need to find at least a try to win away from home in South Africa. Like, it's going to take more than you're probably going to take more than, so that will be on the offense. But I think they will still stick to their guns in terms of like that loose forward combination, or loose forward plus Kramer. So 4 of those guys. Like, they're going up against a Bok team that doesn't have Big Dwayne in it, that doesn't have Peter Steph du Toit in it now. They kind of fancy their chances getting an edge over the Quagga Smiths and the other guys, Jasper Wiese, or even Van Staden off the bench as well. Like, they'll kind of fancy their chances in the tight and in the collision to at very least mix it and be nearly at parity, if not maybe getting an edge. Like, if they can bring the the right pitch to the battle, like what we saw from them in that All Black game, when they can be that ferocious,
definitely different
and
without fans.
No fans away from home.
They had good fans.
Exactly.
Actually, bizarrely last year they had in Australia there was just a load of Argentine fans who were egging them on.
Made a big difference to the emotional pitch that you need to play that game, especially against the Springboks. But I think they will start with a more tight game plan like that. I think they're going to stick to their guns. I think the performances of, well, mainly Sanchez will be pivotal to their chances if he can get his kicking boots on. Like I think Sanchez is a superior 10 to Elton Yankee. 100%
he's a superior 10 to Elton Yankee. Sanchez at his best is one of the finest 10s in the game.
Yeah, 100% true. Now he like all 10s, if they're getting dominated, then the game passes them by because they can't do anything. But if they can achieve parity and then make it about Sanchez's read, give him the bit of time, sit Quagga down, don't allow him to get out of the line because you've won a few contacts, and then give Sanchez a little time and space.
And that's where Bruni comes into it as well. Like, it's something we didn't see the Lions do was hitting those shallow lines. De La Fuente as well, but I think Bruni in particular is a ball playing number 8 on the good side of the ball. If he can just get on top of the gain line and present quick ball to Iskura perhaps even more so than Cabelli is more suited to working in offense. We've been talking about the Lions sitting down the Springbok defence. The Pumas might be the guys to do it, and Bruni in particular, but all that loose forward trio, Facundo Issa and Matera, they're all very good on the ball, where Kramer isn't, and that's kind of why he's shifted out of the way to lock as a ruck hitter. Like, they really don't want Kramer touching the ball, because he'll try to...
The ideal scenario is him not touching the ball, just smashing men. 40 tackles in a game and no touches on the ball. That's what you want from Kramer.
So absolutely they need that, but on the offensive side of the ball, where it's almost more crucial, because the Springboks have a way, if you're a good defensive team, of just like, your defense isn't getting involved, son.
We're not going to attack you.
Exactly, we'll attack you at the set piece.
And we're going to kick at Carreras all day, and he'll be the only factor.
Exactly. So, but on the offensive side of the ball, they have a chance to change that dynamic, and I think Bruni is a really key man. If he can pick some good lines off 9, get on top of the box, pick the right lines onto the right soft shoulders, and present quick ball, and then you get Sanchez on the ball in a bit of space. You'll either catch them offside, or Sanchez will have a little bit of space to work with in terms of trying to find the right man. All of a sudden there's a bit of momentum.
Kick pass is a potential, all of this kind of stuff. If you can just give Sanchez the time and space to orchestrate it, then they can edge this. They can edge this even in a tight one, with the difference being the wiliness and the execution of a guy like Sanchez. And you're right to cite Bruni as well, because his performance in that last test against Wales was sparkling. Every touch was fantastic.
Even against Romania, he was the guy who was digging it out for them.
Truly.
He's a brilliant player, really good form as well. So he might be the outstanding back row forward on the pitch, apart from Khaleesi maybe. But if he can get on top of that Springbok team, or just a few contacts and generate some quick ball, we could get that exciting picture of trying to open up the Springboks and Sanchez having it on a string. All of those things are important. The other thing that's majorly a factor in this game is the 50-22.
Yes.
We talk a lot about the contestable kicks, but Sanchez has a really good eye for a deep touch-finding kick indirectly into touch. Like, that is a huge window.
Should have mentioned it for the box as well, because that is a factor in all of the... Like, it's a factor now that the Rugby Championship has come around, and it suits both of these teams' game plan to try
I just don't see the box doing it as much. I think the box will kick the upper unders.
They will, but they have a guy in Elton. Like, maybe actually Franz Dane from 12 is the most likely candidate in the box camp to pull one off. Or
Willems on like receiving a kick if he has a bit of time, might try a Rob Kearney style one. But
indeed. But it's something that's worth dialing, because both of these sides have good offensive mauls as well, and they will want to get them rumbling.
If I was to pick one candidate on the fit pitch who's most likely to kick a 50-22, it's Nicolas Sanchez.
He's the most educated boot out there, and the guy who's played 10 for years, and if you can manage to dial one or two of them in, I think you could see it be a seminal moment for the Argentinians. It's such, like, both of these sides with their traditional rugby mindsets, like, they will respond to the 50-22, like, be it for or against. If you pull one off, their whole pack will love them. Like, guys like Kramer will be big in rubbing little Sanchez on the head and going and then conversely the Bok pack will be frustrated that kick 50-22 and now it's their lineup. It's annoying. Like, it is just one of those things that packs do respond to. So that could be. It could be the first game. I think it's more likely than the Bledisloe game to be the first time we see a 50-22 pulled off. And I'd like to see it be the Pumas, because I think it could be a good inroad for them.
I think it's most likely, absolutely. So listen, with all that said, how do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's tough in my head. I actually just based on what the Bok team that they've picked and the emotional high of winning a Lions series versus coming back a week after. It's tough. I can definitely see them struggling with the physicality of the Bok or of the Pumas initially. But I think my head is giving them the win on the home turf, on the home patch, ultimately digging themselves out. I also value their bomb squad off the bench. I think like that 6-2 split will pay dividends. That front row union that they found. Like I think if they're even tight, within tight, like because actually what Argentina have. Even in that great All Black win, like they were dominating every second of that game, and yet on the scoreboard they weren't.
Yeah.
And like that's a similar bad habit that the Boks sometimes have. But I think in that tight game, I think ultimately I have the Boks edging it, probably by about 9 or 10 points, but a tight one.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say by that many. I think when the last time they met in South Africa, it was 24-18 in favour of the Boks. I think it's going to be somewhere around there. I think the Pumas absolutely can win. I think you should put it up again. I think do not sleep on the Pumas. I think they're a very, very good rugby team. I think if Sanchez is on his blow and kicking the kicks and getting them to the right parts of the pitch, they have a very, very good chance of winning. But it will take some offense. It will take them getting some offense off, and that's like the high tariff stuff, because even without Am and Dale Indy, like the Springboks can make hay on defense, and I think that factor will be the key factor again. I don't see Argentina dominating enough up front or in the tight, and I think the way that they've generated penalties but via the jackal and the low tackles is something that the Springboks just won't give them. So I think in large parts you're going to be looking at a lot of kicking. If Sanchez can edge that'd be brilliant, but they might work their way up the field, the odd 3-pointer here and there. They're going to have to find a try or two with a bit of offense, and like that's the real key. If they can do that, they have a great chance. Whether they can or not remains to be seen, but they've been plotting away, and usually when they plot away they come up with something. So I think I think it's a very, very interesting game, but my head says the Springboks just. But I don't know.
No, it's tit for tat. I think I do expect a very interesting, dynamic game with a lot of meaty collisions. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a different spectacle to the Bledisloe one you'll have earlier, but it'll be a reminder of what's great about the Rugby Championship and all the different styles as well. And it'll just whet the appetite for what's to come in the weeks to come.
Absolutely, it's going to be a thriller.
Thank you very much for watching that video. If you're new here, please do like and subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified when we upload again. But mainly, please drop a comment down below. We enjoy hearing your thoughts on it. Thanks.